بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين. Prime Ministers, Mr. Minister, Mr. Chair, dear Mr. Harb, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like first of all to, of course, express once again my honor to address the audience in this on this closing ceremony of the prestigious MEDays on its 16th edition, which is already a big achievement and it deserves your applause once again. I have a couple of things to say, of course, with regards or connected to the theme. I think that I will say basically two things. Trying, first of all, to reframe and ask the question, is there a central new question that we're trying to answer so that we know what exactly are we answering as a question? Because the job you've done is very deep, exploring every year a different theme that connects to the reality of the world and the new challenges. And second, of course, try to see what is happening in Morocco, in particular, under the guidance of His Majesty. To me, the central question is, are we preparing the world, our country, our societies to the next pandemic? Because before COVID-19, there was practically no debate on the theme. So of course, when we had COVID-19, everyone was asking himself, is there going to be a next pandemic? And how can we be resilient? And how can we process the sovereignty challenge? And of course, we've seen all over the world, politicians, public policy makers, reinventing industrial policies, social policies, finance, in order to address these issues in particular. But I think, and I suggest, that we address the question on a different scale, which is, in my opinion, how can we prepare our societies to be more resilient? And what are the new building blocks that we need to build within our internal forces to make sure we can achieve the goal? And of course, as all prime ministers and distinguished guests have just said, and I want to build on that, what is the new central role of cooperation connected to the issue or the challenge? Because unlike what we can think, sovereignty means much more cooperation. Much more cooperation. So I think that we need to revisit three loyalties, traditional loyalties that we have when we frame policies, we make decisions as public servants or as politicians. The first loyalty we need to revisit, in my opinion, is the one that is connected to the way our societies are organized, because you cannot achieve resilience if your society does not step along with you. The problem or the issue or the new trend that we have is a confrontation between two dynamics in our societies for a decade now. We have a first dynamic, a historical one, in which we witnessed societies of order, des sociétés de l'ordre, in which democratic rules are observed, but you need to wait until you get your place or you have your reward or whatever. And the way society was and still is organized, was to provide the population with the rules, the type of democracy, of representation that makes it possible to get there and to cue society of order. You have local elections, you have national elections, you build elites, and you work on your economic models, etc., etc. But since a couple of years now, not only in the Arab region, but all over the world, we had this new egalitarian societies that are taking or occupying space in which the youngest generations do not accept the rules of the societies of order. So the challenge that we need to address while trying to answer this question is, how can we shift and move, enhance the way our institutions operate, answer the demands of our constituencies, in order to make sure that the answers are not destinated to societies of order. Because the way we distribute the rights, the power, the resources, they still obey, in general, to the rules of the society of order. And I think that wherever we go in the world, unless the country is very rich or over-rich, everyone is facing these kinds of questions, and the design or redesign of our institutions is important, and we need to ask ourselves, how does decentralization, for instance, offer these kind of questions? How does the civil society, or how can civil society contribute into the design of the society of the new generation of societies, instead of solely the public services and the government and the other, let's say, components of government, be it at the central or the local or regional level. Of course, we don't have much time to elaborate, but this is one of the major questions. I think that we still need to use the human ingenuity in order to try to find practical answers. The new development model, triggered by His Majesty, brought to the table this central question. How? We have this proposition in the new development model where we say, we cannot ignore the new central role of civil society. But the question is how? And the public and the decision makers need to find a practical way, an impactful way to make it happen in important areas such as, for instance, the care industry. If you want to have a resilient society, care industry needs to work in your country. Solidarity needs to work in your country. Inclusion needs to work in your country. Do you think that the mindset of the public servants is 100%? Does it fit 100% to these kinds of concepts and the consequences, how to implement them? I'm not sure. But the people coming from the public, from the civil society can do. But they need to get much more professionalized in order to deliver these kinds of services under a new dynamic. The second loyalty that we need, in my opinion, to revisit is the loyalty, and it's been said, to cooperation and international cooperation and multilateralism, etc. Of course, there is so much to say to this regard. And there are so many hurdles, so many problems, so many questions. But we've witnessed these last years that it is possible sometimes to operate new ways of collaboration that are not necessarily under the conventional wisdom of the institutions of 1945. And what you've done with this very specific, distinguished guests is an original path to connect differently. Historically, Morocco and the Commonwealth, we were not that close. But today, you're here, you're expressing yourselves, and we're listening to you. You know much more our country, and we know much more your countries. And it's important to see, with every single country, what are the specific areas where we can collaborate, and it fits the resilience and the sovereignties. The third, loyalty we need to revisit and question is the loyalty to the conventional economic policies. Because by the end of the story, if we are facing a crisis, a pandemic, an international geopolitical crisis, whatever, there will be direct impact on the people, on their social lives, on the economy. We could have made the choice in our country to stick to the traditional sectors and industries, and I'm sure Mr. Minister will elaborate on that. But we've made the choice, hard choice, to open up to what will define the future, even if from a technological way, from a human resources way, from a financial way, we're not maybe the best, but we believe in ourselves when, under His Majesty's guidance, Morocco starts a huge program on green hydrogen, for instance. When they're under His Majesty, we have major shifts and major investments and major political hard work to make it happen. But if you want to revisit the loyalty to the traditional economic policies, of course, we know the stories that we read everywhere. Structural change, shift from services to industry, but complete with industry, with services, of course. But we absolutely need to make sure that these shifts, that the risks that we're taking when we are reallocating resources in investment for hydrogen instead of other stuff, we can do all this change in a peaceful way. So social peace is very, very important. This is why His Majesty also launched a very big dynamic on what we call the social state, where we make sure that while we are transiting in the energy, in the industry, in the technology, in our social cohesion, we still can live together. There are tools for that. Social dialogue is one of them. There are tools for that. Major reforms in the labor code, in the way the society is organized. The society can protest. The society can express itself. And this is exactly what we're doing in Morocco now. And the end of my speech is to say, can we do all this simultaneously? So, because this requires resources. This requires, of course, financial resources. This requires also political resources. This requires elites. This requires thinkers. This requires investors. And authorizations from the population, because you cannot build such a project without the adhesion of your own population. So you need to express the project and to make it tangible so that your own people believe in what you say. Alhamdulillah, as we say, thanks to God. In our case, we have these ingredients and these elements, and this connection between the people and His Majesty makes it possible. The government tries to play role at the best of the possibilities, but the most important thing is to believe in our bigger dream, a dream for our country, for our nation, but also a dream for the world. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen.